Why did the King have a row with Boris Johnson? And why did Harry have a row with his ghostwriter? And should William broker peace between his brother and the palace? We've got another great show for you coming up. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin. Well, the coronation might be over, but you don't need to panic because that doesn't mean it'll get quiet on the royal front. If anything, it's the opposite. So if you'd like more royal videos from the best royal experts, make sure you subscribe to our channel and you'll never miss another episode of Palace Confidential, nor will you miss the likes of the Daily Mail's royal editor Rebecca English and the paper's diary editor Richard Eden. Welcome to you both. As well as all of those stories I just mentioned, we also have some delightful video from Prince Louis's first royal engagement, so don't miss that. Stick around. Now, Rebecca, the last time we saw you, you were just out of the Abbey.
Had my
in
hat
your
on.
Gorgeous hat. But the royal fun didn't stop there. I'm exhausted just thinking back to it all. We had coronation concerts, a day of volunteering, and I understand now, unlike you, the King and Queen are having a nice earned rest.
Well, kind of, because of course, for the King, actually, a holiday is not really a holiday because he still has those, red boxes of papers he has to deal with every day. But they have gone to Sandringham. He still managed to squeeze an engagement on the way there in Cambridgeshire, digging some turf at a new laboratory that's being built. But they are going to be off until probably the beginning of next week, I think. And it's just a time to clear their heads and some nice country walks because we actually have a really busy period coming up. This kind of early summer. Richard will know more than anyone. The social diary really kicks in, Royal Ascot, Order of the Garter, all sorts of things. So, but they are taking a few days off.
Must feel a bit like a honeymoon, really, no? After the wedding.
After the country wedding, as someone described it.
Yeah, I don't think they'd quite see it as a honeymoon. But it's just, they just need to. You think they're 74 and 75, and it's been a pretty gruelling few days. So I don't think anyone will begrudge them that, will they?
Absolutely not. And just though, as that rest was announced, came the news of this extraordinary row between Charles and our then Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Yeah, so this was a Daily Mail exclusive. So to kind of put it in a nutshell, there's a controversial government policy involving migrants to this country being sent to be processed in Rwanda. And last year, at a private reception, one of my colleagues reported that the then Prince of Wales remarked on this as being appalling. And there was another exclusive on the front page of the Mail this week. There's a new podcast kind of shedding some more light on that whole situation. And it's been claimed that the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson took the then Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, to task when they were in Rwanda last year for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting about it. And it's basically saying you've overstepped the mark on this. This is government policy, you shouldn't be getting involved.
Gosh, Richard, that's quite unfortunate timing, isn't it, for our new king?
It is unfortunate, immediately after the coronation. So we should explain the context. It's just because it was for this new podcast which was being released this week. So, it wasn't... I guess that they were trying to cash in on the publicity of the coronation, I imagine.
No, really? Yeah.
But anyway, interesting timing. But of course, what it does is bring back all the memories about Charles's role in the past, his often controversial interventions, and it brings the whole question of what will he be like as king.
Yes, and Rebecca, he is undeniably a passionate man. We know he has spoken up on many issues, but just because he's king now, can he really be relied on to toe that line?
See, I think he can, and I don't think that's me being naive. I think we've actually seen the proof of the pudding, that since last September, the speeches we would have expected him to give, they haven't materialised. There have been no public comments or kind of any sorts of interventions, and I'm not aware of anything behind the scenes as well. So what he's doing is he's still taking an interest in subjects he's been very passionate about, like the environment, interfaith dialogue, everything, building, young people, youth crime. But what he's doing is using his convening power. So he's pulling in change makers in these fields to Buckingham Palace and letting them do the talking. Normally we'd hear a speech on it for him at these receptions. He's definitely not doing that, but he's still being involved and listening and, convening the right people.
But Richard, we know, don't we, that the King cares about a huge range of issues. Surely that's going to be somewhat of a challenge to now just stay silent for the rest of his reign.
It really is, and it means there is likely to be lots of controversy. And the reason is when Queen Elizabeth became Queen, we didn't know what her views were on anything, and we still didn't, even at the time of her death. And that was very helpful in a way, because it meant that people across Britain, you know, whatever their political views, in a way they could always feel like the Queen was on their side. But it's much more of a challenge for King Charles, because we know his views on so many different things, whether it's from farming or the environment or architecture. So, you know, every time there's an issue, we will know where he stands. But I think, you know, he's mature enough to sort of go beyond that and say, OK, but I'm not going to cause controversy here. But there's still likely to be tensions, I would have thought.
You hope. You hope for your columns. But one thing that we do know about the Queen, famously, Rebecca, is that she loved her horses. And this will be the first Windsor Horse Show without her. So it was a favourite of the Queen's, and I understand the King will miss it. So it's just another one of those things that where, wow, change is here in so many ways that we hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate timing. As we said, it's just come after the coronation, so him and the Queen have taken some time out at Sandringham. I think if he doesn't attend next year, then that's more of a signal that he's taking less of an interest. It's just he's different from his mother was, that he's just not that interested in the horses. He liked playing polo, he liked riding, but he's not got the same passion for breeding, for racing that she had. But Queen Camilla does, so, you know, maybe she might step into the breach that the Queen Elizabeth left.
I bet you will find them taking an interest next year. I mean, remember, this is a show that they created, literally, you know, on their estate in Windsor. And the Queen used to go every day. You'd see her going on the stall, seeing if there was anything she wanted to buy. Used to get lots of stories.
And she had a lot of horses, her own horses. And that was always the lovely thing. I remember a couple of times when she won, and I asked what was it that Queen Elizabeth won. It was something like a £25 Tesco voucher. But she was more chuffed with that than anything that she had, because it was her horse that had won it.
And we used to see Prince Philip competing in the carriage driving there as well.
Yeah, we'll probably see Lady Louise actually competing this year, I bet.
Oh, amazing. So there's so many memories. But Richard, in a piece by your colleague, Richard Kay, this week, he suggested there are so many questions still to be answered, like who will be taking over the charity patronages?
Imagine being one of King Charles's advisors at the moment. You sort of say to him in the morning, oh, I really think we should address this, and there's so many big issues.
You could just have a tombola of issues and just pull one out.
Yeah, I wonder how they're going to sort of tackle them. But one of the key things identified by Richard Kay was just the vast number of patronages, because they still haven't all been distributed from Prince Philip. He had lots. Then you've got Prince Andrew's. Some of them have been. There were Prince Harry and Meghan as well. Some of them, like the National Theatre, you know, went to Queen Camilla, things like that. But there are still lots of them. And then obviously you've got the Queen's, and I don't know the precise number, perhaps Rebecca might, but it was a vast number of charity patronages. And these were, you know, as a charity boss yourself, you will know that these royal patronages can be really important to the charity involved, and they'll be very disappointed if they lose it.
Well, is that something that a lot of businesses and charities will face, just waking up to the news that it's been rescinded?
100%. I mean, I don't know if they're going to rescind them. They might try and redistribute them, but for every time I go on an engagement with a member of the royal family, particularly ones involving the King or the Queen, of course the charity will always make a point of saying to me, well, obviously they were our president or our royal patron, but we don't know what's going to happen. And some of them, for example, the Royal Osteoporosis Society, have got the title royal through their affiliation with Camilla, who's obviously very passionate about that issue because her mother and grandmother, you know, died of that brittle bone disease. So it's a period of uncertainty for them, for definite.
Do you think it's a priority for the palace and the King to resolve that, or is it just down the list?
Yeah, post-coronation, I think, to be honest, their focus has been getting through the coronation, because as we've all seen over this weekend, there's been so many moving parts of that has taken up a lot of their attention. And obviously they had the state visit to Germany as well. There's been a lot of things they've crammed into the last 6 months, but I definitely think that's going to be a focus for them moving forward.
Speaking of cramming, there's quite a piece in today's paper, Richard, from Jenny Murray saying she doesn't know how long the King can last. It's an extraordinary statement. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is Jenny Murray, very distinguished broadcaster, and she was just commenting really on, what she'd observed from watching the coronation, and she saw that the king, looked very tired. She thought he didn't look particularly well, and so she was wondering.
I just thought he looked quite emotional.
Yeah, I mean, I would be wary of kind of judging too quickly on an event like that, because it's such a big thing they've been building up to, and also you'd be so nervous, So I would judge how he looks kind of in the future. But I think the point she wants to make was she thinks that he will abdicate at some point. In the same way we've had popes stepping down, she thinks he might do. But I think having waited so long to become king, I can't see it happening in a hurry.
What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, I always say when I'm asked this question, people are kind of looking at it from the wrong angle. They were talking about when Queen Elizabeth died, surely it should skip a generation to the very popular Prince and Princess of Wales. But they forget how William and Kate feel about that. They've got 3 children under the age of 10, and they want to, we'll obviously discuss this a bit more later, but they want to protect them and to ring fence them and to allow them to grow up I suppose as unencumbered by this royal role that they've got as possible. Yeah. So actually they don't want it.
There is no one snapping at the king's heels. That's the point, So whatever Jenny Murray thinks, I don't think it's going to happen in a hurry.
I think she was right. We all commented actually in the Abbey on Saturday, us that work with him a lot. I thought she looked tired and stressed, but I genuinely think it's because of the occasion. The physicality of wearing a £6 crown and those heavy robes and the cameras on you.
And you had to get up at the crack of dawn. I imagine His Majesty did as well. Probably didn't sleep that well. It's
a lot of rehearsals.
Yeah.
I mean, the night before they were holding a reception for world leaders. He'd had a Commonwealth lunch. He'd had another meeting. They've packed a lot in, so of course he's going to look a bit tired and stressed. And people I speak to say he's still got as much energy for this job as he ever had. I know I keep on saying it, and people don't sometimes believe it. He is a total workaholic.
I think they were just comparing.
I don't think it's changed.
I think the problem is they're comparing him to Penny Mordaunt, who we saw, holding that sword for 51 minutes like
Queen
this.
Penny.
So, by comparison, anyone looks rather.
Did you hear there was a podcast on that this morning actually, and she said she'd taken painkillers before she did it, because she said it was something like £8 that thing, and she had to carry it for 51 minutes, I think she said, holding it up. And then she was given another one that weighed slightly less, but as well as doing the old press-ups, she'd taken painkillers.
And there wasn't even one muscle shake. I mean, we have to salute Penny for that. But your comments have been very, very positive about how much you loved the coronation. So thank you so much for those. We love receiving them. Pamela Fraser said, I came from California just to experience this moment in history. Wow. And I was not disappointed. I was born a few weeks after King Charles and have waited for him to fulfil his destiny. This was something I knew I had to be in London to experience. That is incredible, isn't it? Now, Juanita Pretorius was moved by the kiss William gave to his father during the ceremony. I don't think you're alone there. That was not a king and prince moment. It was a father-son moment between William and Charles. And Gary Crumreen wanted to give a shout out to the king's equerry, you and Sarah Vine. The real rock in the whole coronation was Major Johnny Thompson. He was behind George, giving him comments. He was all over buttoning the king's garments, picking up the trail, etc. He made sure everything went off. The king owes him a great honour. I imagine Johnny gained a few more fans this week. I believe people saying he's very handsome, but I hadn't noticed. Not me. I've only got eyes for my husband. Keep those comments coming in. We do love reading them. Let's get back to my guest now, and a piece this week by the Daily Telegraph's royal correspondent argued that one of the jobs of the loyal Prince of Wales was to build bridges with his brother. Yes, Camilla Tominey wrote, if Prince William wants to be seen as the son the king can rely on, then he must start by repairing his broken bonds with his brother. Do you agree with that, Rebecca?
Well, at the risk of sounding a bit petulant, why should he? I mean...
I could just hear William going, well, he started it.
Yeah, exactly. You can hear what I was like as a teenager as well, can't you, as well? Yeah. Why should I? Why should I? Look, it's a very complex situation because, of course, this is a family and a family firm. And in every job people do, you have to bite your lip at times. There are things that you do to keep the peace. But I think Harry has taken it out of the professional and into the personal to such an extent, and has has so upset and so angered his family. I just don't see why William should be expected to do that. Maybe they will do it. Maybe they will paper over the cracks. Maybe there'll be a grand rapprochement. But I don't think we should put that weight of expectation on William, and he should be allowed to do it in his own time, if that's what he wants.
It's so interesting, isn't it, that even in quarters where you think Harry might have sort of, relentless cheerleaders, there was this interesting piece in the New Yorker from his ghostwriter, J.R. Moehringer, where he talked about working with Harry, his honesty, and he also highlighted some tensions he'd had with the Prince. Tell us about this.
To be fair to J.R. Moehringer, it was a generally sort of positive piece, but as you'd expect from him, who's used to delving, really deeply into people's personalities, very good writer, it was very revealing, and essentially he, revealed how difficult it was working with Harry. He said at one point, he almost decided to quit. That they were having it was 2 a.m. and he was kind of at the end of his tether. And he said, if I found myself, shouting at Prince Harry, and they were just arguing about what to include. But the gist of it was that, Harry wanted his book to be just a sort of long rebuttal of every story that had ever been written about him.
I wonder how many words that would have run to.
Oh, and imagine how boring it would have been. It's to J.R. Moehringer's credit that he managed to produce a readable, interesting book. It didn't really sound like Prince Harry at all. Let's be honest. It didn't feel like the authentic voice of Prince Harry, but it was a beautifully written book.
Do you have a view on it, Rebecca?
Yeah, interestingly, I was discussing it with somebody who used to work for them years ago this week. I was talking to them about another piece, and I said, "Oh, have you read Spare? And what did you think?" Not for story, I was just interested, to hear what people at the heart of it has said. And so many of them said exactly what you said, that there was large chunks of that book that were not how they remembered it in any way, shape or form, or there was a loose account of the events, but had been from a very different perspective. But also exactly the point you made, Richard, that there was so much of it that wasn't Harry's voice. They said sometimes you could hear things, especially when he was talking about the media. They said I could hear the Harry of old, the same gripes now as he had then, but a lot of it, they said they didn't felt was massively authentic.
What do you think of what Sarah Vine wrote in the Mail, that the episode spoke volumes about Prince Harry and his behaviour, and that those who have tried to talk sense into him or save him from himself have been, quote unquote, systematically shut out of his life? Is that true?
I think that is spot on, that there is a lot of people over the years who have genuinely, for the best of reasons, tried to save Harry for himself, whether it's falling out of nightclubs and brawling, or taking on fights that he didn't need to take on. He sees that as controlling, whereas the people I know say, no, actually we were trying to help him, because you just can't, you can't go through life, like a whirling wind, fisticuffs up all the time. It's just not how life works. It's not beneficial for your mental health or even your physical health to be able to do something like that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, imagine, what J.R. Moehringer is saying, that, he ended up shouting at him, but if you're an employee at the palace, an aide or whatever, you can't really shout at your boss. It was a different relationship, because here, this was a kind of star writer brought in to make him lots of money,
Well, they survived it. They got that book out.
Yeah.
But Moehringer does come out, and as you rightly say, the piece is a much longer piece, and he comes across very much as Team Harry out of it, and thinks he's got a lot of points that to be made that are fair. What he was saying is, you just can't use this book to fight every battle, mate. Or dude is the word he used. Dude.
Maybe there'll be another book. We know they've signed a book deal for more than one, don't we? So.
God, are there any grudges left? Let's move on. Now, Rebecca, your job is always full of surprises, but this one was a big surprise this week. Louis's first royal engagement. Let's take a look at that clip.
tell you what, you can pop that in the file. What do you say?
Oh my goodness.
Welcome. I hope you taste it.
You've made his day.
Have I made his day?
You've made his day. We're going to hear a peep out of him now for about 20 minutes. That is good.
Rebecca, tell us more about that. How cute was that?
Oh, he was adorable. As a mum, I just had to kind of stop myself from like pinching his little cheeks.
Kidnap.
Yeah, he was he was very cute. So I have to say, I didn't expect them to come, and it was a job on Bank Holiday Monday. And after such a busy weekend, I'll be honest, the thought of getting up and driving to Slough was a bit like, oh, right, okay, I'll do it. But
with apologies to our Slough viewers, it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
It's nothing to do with Slough. It was just getting in my car and having yet another journey in a long working day. And on the way, I got a whisper that there might be some extra guests, but it really wasn't until I got there I could confirm that they were. The palace always say TBC, which is normally code for yes, but we can't really say it until we know what the kids are like in the morning. And so I expected George and Charlotte. I certainly didn't expect Louis, and he kind of came bundling out the car in his little shorts, and they got stuck straight in. There was painting, they were kind of digging stuff into wheelbarrows, they were in a digger, they were doing handprints, there were marshmallows, there was archery. It was just great fun, and it just came across what lovely kids they are. They were so natural, no airs of graces, just got stuck in it, actually were really enjoying it.
Richard, what do you think it must be like for William and Catherine to have their parenting on display? I mean, that would make me nervous, and I'm not a famous royal.
Yeah, I could imagine the pressure if you said to your average parent, you know, with your 3 young children, we're going to have them all on display, and it's all going to be filmed and recorded.
And if anyone has a tantrum, just come on, darling.
Yeah.
Come on, darling. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a reflection of the fact that they are sort of getting used to appearing at various things at events, and they're being brought up very well, you know, very well behaved. They obviously trust them not to do anything, not to start, you know, swearing or hitting each other or whatever. But
and actually, trust, you're right, Richard, because that was really interesting. That William and Kate weren't on their shoulder the whole time. They stood back and they trusted their children to do their things, and just Kate every now and again interjected with Lou and was like, oh, good job, Lou, and Lou Bug she called him, which was very cute, you know, good job, well done. But you know, they trusted their kids to behave and do the right thing. And I think what helped, and this was really interesting, there was, people imagine there's going to be a kind of a massive bank of photographers at these things, and it literally was just me, a photographer, and a cameraman with their producer. So it was very low key, you know, it was very deliberate that they weren't going to, you know, upset them or make them feel uncomfortable. We actually agreed not to be there when they arrived, so they didn't feel like they were walking in and seeing a camera. So it was all very natural, and I think people don't understand sometimes, you know, they do take great effort, as do we, to ring fence their children. And I think what was so delightful, it came across how natural I are. There was one bit I was walking, they were helping out a scout hut, and there was one bit I was walking around the grass to get to the next bit, and suddenly this little kid came pounding past me, charging, and I realised it was Louis. And there was no police officer, there was no parent, he was just running around to get some more stuff to put in his wheelbarrow, and he was so proud of it. And a bit later, then a slightly kind of panicky looking press officer, has anyone seen Louis?
Oh my goodness.
But that's the thing, they were having fun, and they were enjoying themselves. And George was in the digger at one point, and I was standing quite next to Louis and Charlotte, and you just saw suddenly Louis turn around and kind of his eyes glint in only the way a 5-year-old boy spotting a digger would, and went, I want to get in that with him. So, you know, they swapped over and they had a go of the controls. It was really lovely to see them as a very natural, warm and fun family.
Well, I mean, it went so well by the sound of everything. Do you think we'll see more of this from the young royals?
They were definitely really encouraged by it. I mean, they definitely don't want to overdo it for the children. I think it's, they really want them to have as an enjoyable childhood as they can, but just slowly introduce them to the idea that they do occupy a very unique position, but actually you can do it and make it work for you and for them and for the public, who have nothing but goodwill for this family and want to see them growing up happy and healthy. So it's a balance, but I think it's one they've shown and demonstrated on Monday that they can achieve.
Amazing. Well, it certainly has been quite a royal week. We hope you've enjoyed all of our coverage. We've absolutely loved bringing it to you, and thank you so much for watching. And thanks to Rebecca and Richard, and we will see you next week for Palace Confidential. Bye-bye.